Whenever you have really leaned into psychedelics, especially in your makeup looks.
Makeup or in real life.
Hello, listener, and welcome to another episode of Library Hours. I'm Reed Brice. This is our second bonus episode to celebrate Pride Month here in Los Angeles. If you haven't already, go check out our first one with LA pub champion Orion. This week, though, we're celebrating the art of drag by profiling one of my all-time favorite performers, yes, that is right, the trans icon and sunset goth herself, Diana. In addition to electrifying looks and heart-snatching performances, Diana is one of the kindest, funniest, and effortlessly cool people I've ever gotten to hang out with. But don't just take my word for it, darling. Let's jump right in so you can have the pleasure of her company yourself.
In the last year of COVID, I've been doing like Twitch streams and Instagram lives, and it feels weird to be sitting down, like not coming out of what do you call it? Like a curtain.
Oh, like just not to feel like that fourth wall is actually broken. You're here with another person.
It's like logging onto a FaceTime call, you know? It's weird. But I like it. This is like the first professional setup that I've been in for a podcast.
Very professional. We are currently in my bedroom in North Hollywood, a tiny room, a sweatbox veritably, and so you're very kind to call it that in any capacity, but doing my best for sure.
We're all doing our best.
So you go professionally by Diana, and you said that you were, at the time of this recording, of course, it'll be a little bit later down the road when it airs, you said that you're coming up on 3 weeks from your 3-year anniversary as professional queen.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, tell me about that experience. Like, what's the road been like, honey?
So I started drag May 12th, 2018? That'd be 3 years, yeah. At DragCon, which was a lot.
That is so amazing.
I put on my first little bit of eyeshadow and then I just went out during the daytime at 9 o'clock in the morning, barefoot, walking around the convention center.
Barefoot in downtown LA?
Absolutely.
Okay, well you had a career wish and a death wish in one, and you were like, let's get a nail through the foot and start my career.
I was fully running around the convention center for an hour in shoes that were too small, and then I just took them off and just went about my day.
Okay, I've been there before. I think anyone who's worn what size did you go in, heels, or what were you wearing?
Oh no, they were definitely heels and a big Cinderella-ish dress that I found at Goodwill, and my first wig that I still own. Doesn't look the same at all.
Especially when they're well traveled, a wig can go through a transformation.
It was well traveled 2 weeks into me owning it. It got really bad really quickly, but...
Wait, was it the sort of thing where when you start out, you're like, okay, I have no idea what other wig or hair type looks good on me, so this is what I'm going to be wearing for most looks while I figure that out?
Yeah, I actually owned 2 wigs to start off with. So I owned a neon orange, not shoulder, back length wig, and then I owned a black wig that was a very similar style.
Yeah, was it more silky straight, or did it have the body waves, or what were you going?
It was a wig that was on my head, and that is the best descriptor I have for that.
I think any queen worth or a drag performer worth their salt will always cringe thinking back at the first helmet they put on.
When I started drag, it was just no experience, no skill level, no talent. It was just a lot of personal drive. And
I think you know what we call the it factor. When I first met you, was you were up in drag, but I don't remember if you had performed that night or not. I think maybe it was just you coming out. It was to Redline, the show. Who was it who ran that show at Redline?
Depends on the day of the week, but maybe a Friday.
I think it was a Friday.
Then it was Pinche.
Pinche. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's amazing. That's one of my drag idols, and luckily enough, I can call her a friend.
Yeah, can you break down Pinche for anyone who has not been lucky enough to experience her show? Right? Is that her pronouns? Okay. At least in drag.
She goes by she her pronouns. She was a Los Angeles drag queen for about 5 years, and she just recently moved to Dallas. She was on the first season of Dragula, and for anyone who has not seen that show or heard of it, spoiler alert, she went home first.
Oh no, you've spoiled it. Was that on YouTube first originally?
Yeah, so it was a YouTube show. It moved to Netflix, and now it's on Shudder.
I have loved the world traveling that the Boulet brothers have done just on these streaming platforms.
Right, it's funny, they and I'll probably get in shit for this, but
Oh, great. Let's cause some controversy on the show.
Why not? I'll say that like they've toured more through different TV networks than they ever have internationally. So
Oh, boy, I mean,
let's just hope that season 4 like helps someone out with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, but like they did prove that there could be another show that could like gain like a dedicated following because it was like the first drag show in almost a decade that I heard through like the grapevine, and that's how people are passionate about it, is when they're going out of their way to be like, hey, I watched this, I need somebody to talk to about it. And it was because if you haven't seen Dragula before, it's basically like a RuPaul's Drag Race, but it focuses more on like horror based drag, the sort of like freak show, the sort of like avant-garde stuff that has like a harder edge, and it has like a almost fear factor framing around it, and also like a weird like auteur horror like Corman
it's
film
like a
thing.
B-movie, but like with drag queens, which is great. Like it's campy, it's crazy, and it's weird.
It's what you want from a drag queen experience, at least the average audience is wanting. So Pinche is somebody that you looked up to, and she was on the show. And I know that a lot of your looks, you were starting to make sort of your turn, and what you were talking to me earlier about, you're like, oh, I'm exploring other silhouettes, other like character and fantasy. Were you specifically into the whole sort of gothier sort of drag when you first started?
Absolutely. The first performance I ever did was based around the movies Carrie and Scream.
Okay.
And I was a big orange hair, little like mesh crop top situation. I was like a teen horror movie character, and like
the final girl. Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't say for me I wouldn't be a final girl, I don't think, but most definitely. Yeah, for those of you who do not know me, I am a Black trans drag queen in LA, but I wouldn't say I'm a final girl. I'm probably like Di's third trying to escape, and then falls in a ditch.
I could see you, like, there's a couple different ways I could see you, Cass. I could see you being like the college girl who is like thinking she can cerebrally get her way out of the way of the killer, and then like maybe dies in the library or something.
Right.
Or when you go in your high vamp sort of like psychedelic look, I could very much see you being like the witchy girl who may or may not survive, but she might say something cryptic that could get everybody else out. Also that.
Ironically enough, I just have recently become a fan of horror movies.
Was it something that you were like, okay, I love the visuals, I love the...
I think so. Like for me, I think that a lot of the things that inspire me as like a drag artist, and like even now as a person, all stem from women in tough situations, or women in horror movies or thrillers or whatever. Like I never thought that Jennifer's Body was a horror movie.
No, it was just it was a statement about especially about a beautiful woman being like, I've had enough with people pushing me around all the time.
Exactly. And like it was a women-led horror movie, like written, directed, starring like two actresses who are not known for horror roles. And I think that like I honestly think that like what's her name? Megan
Fox?
Megan Fox, yes, her. I think that she should do more horror movies, because after Transformers I was like kind of not caring about what her work was, but as soon as Jennifer's Body like started premiering, I was like, this is it. Like this is a movie that like so many people could relate to, and in an odd way, like I think that she was one of the main inspirations for my drag character, is like someone who's pretty-ish. And
pretty-ish. Okay, we're getting humble now. You are a freaking model. you are 1 billion feet tall, most of his legs.
I agree, but it's taken some process to get to it. But honestly,
to allow yourself just to speak out that aloud, like, yeah, I'm powerful, I'm smart, and I do happen to be beautiful, so I understand why you're trying to objectify.
Right. I mean, I get it. But like for myself, I was just like, how can I be an interesting drag character without outwardly covering myself in blood or trying to be comedic? And somehow now I'm both.
Yeah, but it's I think sometimes we can get scared of stepping too much into the persona, because you're like, it's gonna read as fake, it's
right.
not necessarily like we want to like desperately get back to like whatever what realness is, because that's like an ephemeral thing, and it's
right.
like, and it's like not even as popular in like in drag that I see around LA anyway. I used to see a lot more realness looks when I was going to drag shows in Riverside back in like the early 2000s. And now, everyone's kind of really wanting to be stepping into character, into persona, into just high fantasy.
I could definitely see how you think that or see that, but I do think that like people well, I don't know, for the LA drag community, for me, and this is just my opinion, so if anyone here
and also and I will fully say that I am a hobbyist. I'm just somebody who is only seeing a microcosm of drag, so I'm probably just seeing the pedestrian stuff.
Yeah, I think that like for myself, like I said, just for me, this doesn't really apply to anyone else's opinions besides my own. When I moved to LA, I saw a lot of drag queens who did like the bikini and big hair and Pamela Anderson and bimbo aesthetics.
Yeah, the fantasy woman.
Yeah, the fantasy,
woman.
The fantasy of a woman. And now I think people are like losing that like overall grasp on drag, and they're being like a little bit weirder and campier. And like even myself, like I went from being a gothy drag queen, and that's still who I am at heart, but now I get to go into like this weird retro acid trippy like moment.
Whenever you have really leaned into psychedelics, especially in your makeup looks,
or in real life.
Well, no, because I know, and I wanted to say, because I know whenever you just step out of the house, it's usually with like so much more like attention to detail and like beautiful like expressions that like it really has like I think it is just you and your regular girl looks that has been inspiring to me to like be like stepping it up myself, and even just as a freaking comedian, I'm just like I want to get back to like feeling like that joy that I got in childhood playing dress up. If that makes sense.
I agree. Like for me, I definitely had like a weird moment during the beginning of quarantine when I was just doing a lot of psychedelics and shrooms and acid and whichever else types of things like that.
Just trying to expand your mind or run away from the things in your mind that were troublesome. In my case,
definitely both. And like I went from being like very dark and like in a very dark place pre-COVID to like becoming like a cartoon character, which I can now like see my drag as. I'm not just one person, I'm 1,000. And like I don't know, it's really been like an interesting journey for me to go from being like so dark and kind of like a depressing character to someone who's like, oh, of course I'll just like pour Cheese Whiz on my head or anything like that, like I can just do anything in drag now. Now I'm weirdly enough, like my drag has taken like a 60s, 70s, 80s like kind of Woodstock businesswoman.
Oh, I am loving I am loving seeing all of the reflections of my favorite period of drag. Is the San Francisco Haight-Ashbury phase with the Coquettes when they started getting going. Have you seen that documentary that they have? I think it's like I think I accessed it on Amazon or something. That like talks about like how they like all found each other in the park, just high out of their minds and wearing every piece of clothing they had at the house, and they didn't know it was called drag at first.
I haven't seen the documentary, but I've kind of lived that experience in a weird way. Like, I've done drag in Los Angeles for 3 years, officially as of 2 weeks or whenever this recording comes out. Who knows? But I've also done drag in San Francisco, and that's like, strangely enough, I've been doing drag there every 6 to 7 months, like pre-COVID. And now, like, that's my second home. Like,
yeah, I heard that scene is like very like open to experimental looks and not necessarily having like you're doing it right or wrong. Can you speak a little bit more about what that scene is like not in like LA versus San Francisco way, but just in like in the way like how have they treated you up there?
I've always been treated with like so much respect from like people who are big in the scene, and like I contemplated like leaving LA for a little bit. I thought about it about 4 or 5 months ago, where I was just like, you could kind of pick up and go anywhere. You're in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. It's not like somebody's going to stop you from moving.
It was a weird thing where we all got robbed of our agency, so it made us start thinking about like, what are my actual options? And for some people, you're like, oh, I suddenly feel freer in some ways.
Right. I was there for Halloween for like a set of gigs, which, in COVID, that probably wasn't a great idea. But I made a lot of money and I had a lot of fun and I was COVID safe. So it's very funny. But I had like the experience of a lifetime. I got to spend an entire week living, not just like performing in that area. And like I stayed in the Haight like pretty close to Sunset Junction or whatever that place is called.
Oh, I mean, I called it Haight-Ashbury, so it's supposed you know that was hate.
Yeah. And I stayed there for about a week, and I just got to walk around the city and go to like Golden Gate Park and things like that, and just got to live. And it took me, I stayed there for like a week and a half, and it took me more effort to come back down to LA than it did to go up. Like I kind of almost just stayed.
I know the Peaches Christ is one of the big queens who runs things out there. But who are is it her that you were seeing, or who are the drag artists that you should be paying attention to up there? Like what shows should people be checking out, like virtual or in person, if you know any particular ones?
Currently I don't remember any of them in person, but I do know that like a queen named Snacks, SNAXX, has been hosting a lot of shows at Oasis. I know Tito Soto, who is a producer on my digital drag shows on Princess Forever. We do Sweat, which is a drag race viewing party. We kind of got tapped out after 45 episodes of season 13.
What a long season it was. We might be into season 17 by the time this airs, but I will say I attended one of your shows. Y'all are so funny. Can I tell you what it gave me in terms of like why I was immediately engaged and why I was telling I that's why I share it on my story just to people.
Yeah,
like,
tell
go
me.
see
I would
this.
love to know.
You run it in a way. Have you ever seen the show Mystery Science Theater 3000?
No.
It is so fucking cool. Especially if you like weird like B-movie stuff. It is a show about an evil genius who gets bored, so he sends the janitor who works at his like laboratory up into space with two robots who are the shittiest puppets you've ever seen in your life. So funny. And
that defines me. Shitty puppets. Yeah.
I'm waka here with you, honey. And what they do is he tortures them by making him watch the worst movies that he's ever seen. It was originally like it was like a public access television show, like really crunchy underground stuff, and they were just showing stuff that were like in the public domain because they couldn't get the rights to anything.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and what they would do is like, of course, he's a cool janitor, and the robots are cool robots, so they would just sit there and talk shit at the movie the entire time, and but they would do it in a way that you weren't annoyed, you weren't like, oh god, shut up, let me like pay attention. It was like actually elevating the show. Not the Drag Race, in my opinion, 13 kind of is a better upswing in energy than it's been in a while.
Yeah,
it's giving me like more surprise, like genuine surprises. It's showing them, it's like letting queens when they're doing well, it's rewarding them instead of just making weird bad decisions of like we got to take someone home. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've appreciated the effort, but you all, when it does get corny or it does get overproduced, you all, because you first of all are all professional drag queens and know what the hell you're talking about. You're not like just some queen at the fucking bar.
Right. I like when I'm critiquing Drag Race, I've been a fan of that show since I was 11 years old. Like I've been watching that show like my entire life. I don't think that people realize how young I am most of the time because I do drag so often. But
It's hard to clock how old anyone is. And yeah, so you have that experience where you've just been steeped in it, but you also know the difference between that and like not real drag, but but the industry. And you're all fucking entertainers who are snappy. You're all really good comedy queens in your own right. I don't know if that's how any of you consider yourselves, but you're fucking funny as hell to me especially when you're just getting stupid with each other.
Yeah.
And like you have actual chemistry with each other. I don't see like 3 individual artists who just all happen to get booked that night and they're just making it work. I see like my friends that like, oh, we'd be making these jokes if nobody else was in the room. And they're just as funny. And that's the sort of, you cannot fake that naturalism that works in a viewing party situation. It's very hard to make those things entertaining to an audience.
I agree. Like for myself, like when I'm hosting a viewing party, I'm not doing it for anyone else. Yes, obviously I'm doing it for money.
You set up the green screen, you did the hair. Yeah.
Right, like I come in drag, or most of the time at this point out of drag because the season is so long. But I just come in and I watch a television show I've watched for years with my best friend and my producer, who is also a really good friend of mine. So it's not like we're
what are their names so we can make sure everyone gets a good plug?
So my producer is Tito Soto, the drag prince of San Francisco and LA sometimes. He was on Drag Queen of the Year. He was actually second place, I believe. and Mojo Carter, who is a drag queen in New Jersey, who is my best friend in the entire world. And we have great chemistry because we have been talking to each other like that for years. It's not like we're making up a product to show people. We're not watching Drag Race to like, I don't know, like just have. We're doing it to have fun. We're not doing it because it turns a profit, even though now it does. My other show, Saliva, is actually my variety show that I host on Twitch once a month-ish.
Do you know the Twitch address off the top of your head?
Yes, twitch.tv/princess4EVR. So it's twitch.tv/princessforever.
And what kind of, is that like a general sort of drag review, or how does that one work?
So for that show, it's more of like a general drag review with people who I consider to be my friends around the entire country. I don't usually like booking people if I'm not interested in their work.
It's hard for you to trust like a blind booking, or like just
I don't do blind bookings. I just keep people in my circle, or like if I see someone who has like 10 followers and they have an interesting video concept, I post it. If I see somebody with 100,000 followers, I've also done that. I've worked with people who are on international versions of Drag Race. I have friends who have just started drag because they're watching my show, and that's so special to me.
Oh no! I used to do this like family show, and a lot of people like comedians will often be like, yeah, kids comedy, like whatever. But it something clicked to me. I was like, I might be some little comedy nerd's first exposure to comedy, because I realized like, and it was very interesting, especially as like not to usually be like a trans experience, but I was like, I didn't have any trans comedians that I watched on TV that like the transness was not the punchline growing up.
Right. I agree, because for myself too, I definitely like, I've never seen anyone like me do anything. I'm like, usually when you're a Black trans woman, you're a dead body on a TV show. And if you're on, let's say, Drag Race, which is one of the few platforms, or like anything like that, you're playing a prisoner, you're playing someone who's in the criminal like field, you're playing a clown,
and it's on a reality show where they might be fucking forcing you to like jump into a dunk tank and ruin your fucking look, and it's like there's so many layers of that. And I was like, I just have people coming up with their kid asking to take a picture because they just thought I was the funniest person in the show, and I was just like, just that was like such a so I can absolutely see how awesome it is to have the scene change, because it definitely was more like, we didn't talk about outside of like saying like the T slur, you know, as like, you know, a casual thing in drag. We weren't talking about like that, especially not in the shows. We weren't like making sure like making sure that like trans artists were like being featured in the way that they should. Not that it's like perfect now, you know, we're running into all kinds of foolishness, right. And we won't name names, but we know what's, if you're involved in the LA drag scene, you know that some wild stuff has gone, or even in the greater community, we've been seeing more pushback, more confrontation, and honest conversation.
Like for myself, with my shows, I primarily cast people of color. I primarily cast trans people. I refuse to cast a cis white man, because we have so many drag queens, especially drag queens of prominence, who are cis white men who don't do anything.
Yeah, and they definitely will say they make their choices on casting in a way that reflects their experience.
Exactly. And like when I'm watching, let's say, an all trans show, I want that show to be all trans people. If I'm watching a Black drag show, I want that show to have all Black people. If I'm watching a show run by me, I need that show to reflect myself and the people that are around me.
Yeah, your principles, the things that entertain you, even that are fucking funny, that are a frame of reference that you don't feel forced into. Yeah. Can I ask you about the other side of it? Not in messy, gory details, but also because I always think about these things too. Is it? Do you ever like feel like yourself like having to work through like professional jealousy the same way that with successes and or people's failures, like figuring out how to make sure that you're a good empathetic creature while you're still like being like focused on your own drive and your own career?
I would be a liar if I ever said that I wasn't jealous of someone else's like successes, because I think everyone is, but.
Or like, well, yeah. How do you think that you work through it? What's your process there?
I really don't work through it. If I'm jealous of someone, I will look at everything that they do and figure out what makes them successful and how I can apply that to myself without being disingenuous. Like, I have seen drag queens who wear the same hairstyle and wear the same 5 outfits, and somehow they have 10,000 followers.
Like the sort of like they have that like Coco Peru thing where it's like, I know it works on me, and that's what I'm putting out there.
I mean, I wouldn't say they're like Coco Peru level in any capacity. I do think that like there are a lot of people who are rewarded for minimal effort and minimal work, and when I work and when the people around me work, we have to work 10 times harder because of what we look like and who we are. And sometimes that is like, that does make me jealous. Sometimes I do want to do the bare minimum and like come in just like a very basic look or performance and get paid. But I'm crazy. So like my mindset tells me work 10 times harder, push yourself further out of the box, and eventually the only box that you'll be in is yours. Yeah. And I kind of have done that at this point.
No, I would agree with that 1,000%. Yeah, like especially when you come from like the working class sector of things, you're working harder just to create the same sort of fantasy that somebody like probably bought, like had somebody else like
Right.
you know, and so it's so integral to make sure that you are able, because that's why I think about like I gotta figure out how to process, like especially like on the more like immediate like circle of friends or like you know peers. I'm like I gotta figure out a way to accept when I experience this jealousy, and then like, okay, how can I make that into a motivated energy instead of like something that is like causing me to be just like navel gazy or bitter or just things that are not productive.
Yeah, and I'm like kind of crazy with that because like I work 7 days a week on my drag, whether or not it's me like not.
That's what people don't know.
Watch, I was about to lie and say I sew my own outfits. I don't. But I definitely like consistently thrift clothing. I pick up silhouettes. I pick up different things like from different levels of inspiration, and now I get to put them on my body and see how they work. And if they don't work, I know what to fix. And I've fallen into the luxury recently of being able to afford custom looks and things like that. So hopefully the next level of my drag impresses people, but I think that I've done pretty great so far with a budget of $0.
No, and I wanted to also ask you, like, because I know this is very ephemeral and it can be like any different kind of thing. But on average, would you say that like when you are when a look starts to come together, does it usually start with like you spot the piece at the thrift store, or do you start to be like, okay, I know maybe the kind of mug that I want to do, like the makeup that you want to do, and you'll start there and start looking for the pieces based on that, or is there? Do you see any sort of pattern for how you find your inspiration?
In a way, yes. I do think I've pieced my looks together in the past based off of like colors. Like I used to wear black a lot. So for myself, it was like, okay, well, this outfit is black, but do you have texture? Do you have layers? Do you have different forms of things that people can look at?
What's gonna get picked up by the lamps in the theater? You know, so that you don't look just like a flat
2D shape. And sometimes it's fun to be a flat 2D shape, but not when you're wearing all black. So
it's hard to do all black, and especially like you got to make sure you're matching the hues of black.
Right. So like when I started drag, it was very much so like big platform boots, devil horns, long black hair, ratty black hair, kind of revealing outfits generally, anything that would make me look like a Sephora employee on their day off. And it worked for a little bit, and then I said, oh, well, you should introduce color to your wardrobe. So I started doing it with like little pops of color in my outfits, or like little detailing, or now I don't even think about the makeup that I'm going to do with looks. I just, if I'm doing like, let's say a colorful face, that's the only thing that I know. I know the base. And from there, it's just what my hands and my brain kind of panic me into doing. Like, almost all of my like colorful faces I've done based off of like, oh, I saw the color pink today and like I really like it, so I'm gonna do it. Or when I did a color series last year of like all the colors in the rainbow, in the traditional rainbow, like Roy G. Biv rainbow.
Mm-hmm. In the small time that we have left, I wanted to ask you a very nerdy question, and I'll make sure that I frame it properly so you're not like, immediately. If you knowing that we are going to be going to a parallel universe where everything is fine. That's just the long and the short of it.
Yeah.
If you could go to any time period to just like go and steal all the racks of some rich lady's fashion or anybody's, what time period would you want to go to? Do you get into, because you were saying that you're getting more inspired, like a piece that Diana happened to bring with her was this beautiful like kind of like baby doll slip sort of thing that you would see a go-go dancer be wearing in like the 60s 70s with a great it was a big bust of ostrich feathers that were like lavender and mauve, and it was a bright tangerine, and it had these stoning details that just like looked like diamonds encrusted up on the top lining. Are you thinking that you might want to go back to like, you know, the shagadelic 60s and 70s?
If I could go back to any time period, it would probably be the late 90s when they filmed Austin Powers.
So you can steal from their
Absolutely.
You shady answer. Stupid.
You know, ironically enough, I keep going into the same like 3 time periods for my looks. It's 1920s, which is a really like big inspiration for me for like colors and flappers and textures and things like that.
I love it because it was right after the Victorian era. Everybody
was
had
showing ankle.
Yeah, but also the silhouettes started changing dramatically in a way we had never seen before, because women literally were like, I fucking give up. I'm going to start letting, like, I'm just going to let my titties hang out and you know, and I'm going to let myself have a more boyish figure and get into that sort of androgyny that started driving the sort of fascist reactionary sort of stuff.
Ironically enough, like my fashion sense and like the things that I'm very, very inspired by are like 1920s like flappers, 60s and 70s like androgynous weird clown fashion, and then like Vivienne Westwood 80s, and for some reason like the late 90s kind of had all of that, and I think that's where like a lot of my inspiration pulls from, like Disney Channel movies of the late 90s and like
it was a Xenon girl of the 21st century.
Absolutely.
Yes, like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. And like the Goofy movie and things like that. I don't know. I feel like my fashion sense went from like Marilyn Manson to like Mickey Mouse.
And honey, you know, if we're gonna deal with two devils, I like this one that allows you to have a little bit more fun and you know bounce off the walls a little bit more. Yeah.
I mean, whichever, they're still all the devil, so it's great.
I was thinking of that Coco Chanel quote. You know, she's famous for, you know, when you're about to leave the house, take one thing off, and then you'll be ready. I often, like, you know, in the same way when you're writing something or you're a painter, like that moment, like how do you know when as a queen when you're like, I'm done? Because I know it's like multi-hour process usually. Mm-hmm. And do you have a sort of like system of like knowing, because you also go for more is more usually in drag. So
yeah, ironically enough for myself, I do take the approach of before you leave the house, take everything off or just put on 50 more things. It's like I'm extremely minimalist or maximalist. There's no in between for me. So like right now I'm wearing a hat that's like neon green with a bunch of chains on it, and it's great.
Oh yeah, no, it very evocative of very much like it kind of, okay, the color palette of the hat reminds me of like the Recess sort of saturation, like very Spinelli, but in a lime green. And then I'm seeing silver details of these. It's like taking like a charm bracelet, but you're kind of like blowing it up a little bit. So you've got like a I want to say that looks like a heart hoop shaped earring that you refashion into that, and then you have a hanging chain the same way that you would have like with like the little clasps and stuff, the way you would have like a chain wallet, but it's like put on like very intentionally onto the ears and in a very there's 2 of them I believe in a good like symmetry. I love it.
Yeah, I just want to be the charm bracelet of drag, like something really just out there and uncommon.
Yeah, she got it at Claire's. Yes. For when you're building like either music or drag looks or anything that you're working on, who are your influences? Who are the artists that you are the most like, oh shit, when I see this I get excited to go do my own work? Because I always feel like that makes a big difference, is when you make sure you're returning to the people that you're that make you a little fangirl or fanboy or whatever.
I mean, I'm a fan of every kind of art. Like I've been looking at a lot of like Salvador Dali paintings. I've been looking at old 90s movies like Cruel Intentions and
those things.
basically anything with Uma Thurman in it. Like I've been looking at and
High camp queen of all time.
exactly like
but still manages to ground it. You believe that this like, wackadoo character just sprung to life.
exactly like she's someone. I think Uma Thurman is probably my biggest like current inspiration. Also like Azalea Banks, no matter how controversial that may be. The art is great, and she like shows me that I can do anything.
She walks the walk. I'll say that like everybody can have their opinion on whatever else is going on in her life. She backs it up by being the most talented person.
Yeah, like I mean, and if anyone knows me personally, you know that about me too. I'm a very vocal person, and it reflects in my art. I'm not a quiet person, and neither is the work that I do.
Yeah, I saw, and you can let me know if you were just goofing on Twitter saying that, but you said that you were getting into making music.
Yes, actually, I used to write a lot. I used to write a lot of music when I was a sad 14-year-old in my bedroom, and I used to think it was bad, but like reading back, a lot of this stuff was like great, like good bones for like better songs.
Yeah, no, like you probably had like the raw intensity of somebody going through it with your hormones,
Right.
and but you just maybe didn't have like the perspective to look back on it and be like, okay, now I can figure out what I was actually trying to say there.
Yeah, and like a lot of my music used to just be really short poems, and now like I wrote a song for my best friend. I wrote a rap to the new Drag Race song Lucky. Like I've written
you rap? That rules.
Yeah, I mean I can rap. I just haven't decided to write my own music until now.
Did you record it?
No. I haven't recorded anything yet, but I don't know. I feel like I have done so many different things with my art, and now it's kind of returning full circle to being a 13-year-old in my bedroom 10 years later.
Maybe because are you and you can let me know if I'm off base. Do you feel like maybe you are in that same way that you kind of could not stay away from your own emotions because everything's so overwhelming when you're a teenager? Do you feel maybe you are starting to drop into a more vulnerable place as an artist to allow yourself to open up that way?
Yeah, I will say like overall a lot of my own art is definitely self-reflection. A lot of it, like I'm more colorful because I can be more open with who I am. Like early, honestly, like pre-COVID and like maybe even like 7 or 8 months pre-COVID, I was a closeted trans woman who does drag. And that, like, just being able to say that out loud, like, my wardrobe just started gaining color, and, like, I started getting happier, and, like, my whole life changed. And I'm really happy to see that, like, now the visions that I had for my drag 10 years ago are what's happening. Like, I'm a talented artist, and I can say that now.
That's so
Whereas,
awesome.
Like, 10 years ago, I was playing a guitar in my bedroom and writing raps and drawing little characters that look like me now. I don't know. It just makes me really happy.
Manifesting. We love it.
Yeah. I mean, ironically enough, everyone says to manifest, manifest, manifest. But I did it, and now I'm here. Recording in a bedroom in North Hollywood,
You
California.
made it, baby. Yeah, you're a star.
I'm famous.
And that was my chat with Diana. I love her so much. And if you share the sentiment, I implore you to seek her out on social media, either at Your Dead Sister on Insta, at Die666Anna on Twitter, or at Black and Board on Venmo. Go tip a queen, it's pride. If you enjoyed this episode and want to make sure you're alerted to the next one, you can sign up to become a patron at patreon.com/Library Hours with Reed Brice. 100% of the proceeds from these pledges go directly to charity, to the Mutual Aid Solidarity and Snacks, who deliver much needed goods, services, and support to the people of Skid Row here in Los Angeles. That's it for me. I hope you'll tune in next month. Otherwise, I hope to any of my queer and or trans listeners out there that however you spend the rest of your pride, you do it knowing you're loved and you have a community out there that's rooting for you. I know I am. Now, do me a big favor, listener, and take good care of yourself. You deserve it. Okay, bye.